All right. Hello and welcome to another episode of BSN's Long Story Short series. With a lot of our episodes, the topic can be a lot more controversial, especially when dealing with the use of technology for digital assets, CBDCs, user data, privacy, and things like that. Today's topic, however, will have even the staunchest skeptics thinking more positively as we use our blockchain to improve the processes that clean and protect our marine ecosystems. Our speakers today include Heidi Berg of Waste to Wear, Sean Frankston of Plastic Bank, and Alistair Douglas of Each Mile and Fishcoin. I hope I got that right. Maybe it would be better if let the audience get to know them. How about we start with Heidi? Just give a quick intro, and then we'll move on to the meat of the webinar.
Hi, good morning, and thanks everyone. Very happy to be here. I am Heidi Berg. I have a Norwegian passport, but I consider myself more as a global citizen. At the moment, based in Shanghai, China, as Chief Marketing Officer of Waste to Wear. And what we do is that we make fabrics and clothes, apparel from recycled plastics. Like the shirt I'm wearing now is 100% recycled plastic bottles. And to secure the feedstock and increase the transparency and traceability in the supply chain of turning plastic bottles into fabrics, we use blockchain. So, and some of our products then is, related to the ocean. Of course, we have some that we pick that's actually ocean plastic, but any plastic which is recycled into something else is actually prevented from going into the ocean.
Okay, great. Well, I just found out that we are neighbors, so have to come visit you in person at some point. Why don't we go now to Alistair, if you can give us a little background information.
Hi, I'm Alistair Douglas. I'm from Australia, but live in Singapore. My company is called Each Mile Technologies, and we're building out technologies to help supply chains operate more efficiently, profitably, and sustainably. In the seafood industry, we have built a blockchain solution called Fishcoin, which incentivizes data sharing from the first mile of the seafood supply chains, incentivizing fishers and farmers to share their data. I'm looking forward to talking about it today, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
All right, thank you, Alistair. Last but not least, we have Sean on the other side of the world. Why don't you give us some background on that?
Perfect. I'm Sean Frankston from Vancouver, Canada. I'm the co-founder and chief technology officer for Plastic Bank, where we set up ethically sourced recycling systems in countries like Haiti, Philippines, Indonesia, Brazil. And we really look at how we can bring dignity and pride and really make recycling a starting point to a better life and not just a supply chain. And we do this by using blockchain to give people an ID, give people a savings, but really have a complete traceability of not just where a plastic came from, but that we add a social impact on everything that we do and can really bring trust to a supply chain, but also trust to impact reporting and really the art of doing good.
Okay, great. All right. I think that we're going to have a very good and natural discussion today. Feel free to jump in at any point if you have some interesting topics or questions for other people in the panel. But maybe we can start before we talk a little bit about your companies and talk a little bit more about what brought you first into these industries. We can go ahead and start with Sean. Tell us a little bit about that.
We really started with the high level of how can we stop ocean plastic? And when we really looked at how can plastic be a business solution, and when you uncover that so much of ocean plastic comes in these countries that just don't have proper waste management systems, and really the concept that if every bottle on the planet was worth $1, you wouldn't see plastic in the ocean on the street. And we've really looked at how can we just reveal that value in plastic, get it to the right place, and really have it being treated responsibly. And, from there, it just became a journey of looking at how can we change the world or change the way the world interacts with, perceives, and uses plastic. And, it's been a fun journey to be on.
Great. Heidi?
Well, my background is more in the financial industry, and that's where I got to know about blockchain and, of course, all crypto. But for me, I was always one of these where, the cryptocurrencies was not so interesting, but the potential of using blockchain in such things as supply chain. And then when I met Waste to Wear, and I've also worked a lot with impact investment, like I mentioned before, I was actually working on some projects in Africa, a lot of projects in Africa, and also Bangladesh and India. So this working with something with impact is fantastic. And then when I met Waste to Wear, working then with both this, this super cool technology, which is blockchain, and solving one of those huge problems. The textile industry is quite bad when it comes to pollution, and 50% of all fibers are actually polyester. So now we are extracting oil to make polyester, while we at the same time extract oil to make plastic bottles, which are just discarded, right? So actually, by using this as an input to the textile industry, it's great. The story of Waste to Wear comes more from the founder, Monique Maizan, a Dutch textile engineer. She was in the textile industry and she saw these facts, right? The fact that they were making so much polyester while at the same time there's so much plastic waste. And she started developing, particularly focused on making high quality products from the recycled plastics, and move up from everything being kind of cheap looking bags that are giveaways, but really making it possible to do high quality products from the recycled plastics. And of course, these, when then again you move up the value chain to higher end brands, they also really want security, because if they are going to say, if a big global brand is saying this is made from recycled plastics, they need to be sure it is. So again, where blockchain comes in with a huge value for them.
Okay, great. Alistair, I think it's your turn now.
Yeah, I said I was Australian, but I was actually born in the UK and grew up at an army base in Germany during the Cold War. Needless to say, we didn't get out much, but when I had to abandon my skis and my sled and moved to Australia when I was just about 8 years old, and I fell in love with the oceans, and I went on to study marine science at James Cook University, and then got more interested in fisheries and aquaculture and how important it is as a source of income and food. And then went on to realize, the fisheries are in a bit of a terrible state. And we're putting a lot of pressure on fish populations and the environment. I actually fell in love with tuna, and ended up studying and researching tuna, doing a PhD based in Tsukiji fish markets in Tokyo, which is the world's largest fish market, and in Australia as well. And realized that traceability was really, really important, because the product, the story of the product, the fishermen, whether it was sustainable or not, was being lost through the supply chain. And so moved into this space. It's critical, because without traceability, we can't identify, verify, and reward responsible production. So that means that the sort of steering wheel is disconnected from the wheels, and we're driving the planet off a cliff as such. We can't move anywhere without it. So it's absolutely critical, mission critical, that we get it. The seafood industry, a lot of people don't realize that it's the sixth largest industry in the world. It's the most traded food commodity. It employs, in part or in whole, 1 in 10 people on the planet. So it's absolutely critical that we get to sustainable fisheries and a responsible seafood industry. So that's why I'm in it.
Okay. Well, it sounds like all three of you are, related to the same industry in terms of like the marine ecosystem, but doing very, very different things. So I guess the challenge will be on me to tie it all together today. No pressure. But yeah, I'm kind of wondering about your respective industries. Do you feel like you guys are, really at the front of the pack and it's only you, or do you see it as more of a competitive industry with a lot of players entering the space now? And I guess that could kind of lead into what is your, unique advantage as a company. So it's kind of a multifaceted question, but I think it could give us some background on, the industry you're working on. Heidi, you look very confident. Maybe we can start with you.
Well, this is an interesting challenge, right? Because more and more companies are becoming more environmentally aware, and all this, ESG reporting, big corporates, they have to report. Customers in Europe and US, they want to have more sustainable clothing, right? So there is a market now for what we're doing for recycled polyester. What happens then on the ground here in China in the factories, that they see that rPET prices are higher, it's a big demand, and it's actually very hard to, so what happens, we actually now have a new problem arising from this, which is fake rPET. So a lot of what is sold as recycled plastics, as rPET, is actually fake. And I think this is one of those, it's a great thing. It is because there is a demand, but now we have this challenge, right? And of course, many brands are really scared of being caught doing greenwashing. If they brand something and they generally think they are buying rPET, and then if you find out that it's not, you can imagine a global brand doing a big campaign saying this is rPET and it's not, right? That's huge crisis. So in this regard, we are the first company who have a blockchain tracing in the way we do through the chain. So there we are leading, and we see then that they see value in this. We are also we have a test method where you can take any fabric which is claimed to be rPET, and we can verify if it actually is. So in this regard as well, we are leaders. The challenge is that this industry, the textile industry, we're talking a very old kind of industrial revolution industry, which is quite set in its, and particularly it's big here in China. It's one of the low end, it's not the high tech industry. So yes, we are, I would say we are a leader in doing what we're doing, but there's a lot of challenges. And I'm really interested in hearing particularly from Sean about how do you create the market? Like, where do you sell the plastic? Because that's also where I think our work also ties very nice together. I think we're more on the creating the market, engaging the textile buyers, but on the sourcing side, having more companies like plastic banks feeding in, and then also assuring it goes through as we know it's rPET. So I think we can be leaders also when we work together. That's also important, right?
Yeah, Sean, do you want to address that?
For sure. No, it's an interesting industry. Like, we started the company just over 8 years ago, and to be honest, when we started, we had to convince companies that consumers would care about purpose-based products. And it's weird to say, but this is a new trend. We had to convince companies that people would care about the ocean. 8 years ago, there was no catchy the size of Texas, more fish. And it was such an uphill battle to kind of figure out, how do we convince companies? But we just knew what was in our control was, how could we create a demand? We had a multi-million person consumer demand asking companies to be responsible, use a social plastic, and being able to then tell companies, look, we can meet this demand for you. So since we're really early, we almost had to create all sides of the market, which for us actually is an interesting kind of advantage, that we have these supply chains on the ground. We have our team in the countries. We certify the branches, our collectors go through entire benefit programs and everything. And we completely deal with the companies all the way to when you have the product on the shelf with the social plastic traceability. But when we started, really, we had to be an end-to-end ecosystem with everyone being a registered, participant in our network. And the weird challenge was when you asked about competition, we were so out of the gate early that people didn't believe it was real until you had other competition to validate that the market exists. So, we were one of the rare companies that were kind of really looking forward to competition coming around, because a single person market can seem too good to be true. But once you actually have comparables, then, it's your own job to make sure you are that top chain and able to do it. So for us, one of the big advantages we always had was, David Katz and I really obsessed with exponential or nothing, where from us, if we're trying to say we're stopping ocean plastic, We can't just be in a couple communities. It can't be marketing campaigns. It's got to be something meant that with our partners, we can all grow to the size we need. And, the world's overpromised for recycled plastic by 10 times. So every big company has said, we're going to use X amount of plastic by this date. It's 10 times overpromised, to which we try to specialize in. We can scale to any size we need it and really get good at how do we doing it without breaking trust, without sacrificing the social impact. And, it's just an interesting industry to try to do it authentically. And it's an industry, as Heidi was saying, sometimes you don't even realize the trust industries that exist in recycling. And when you can bring in trust and start layering it, there's a lot of opportunities to not just, provide a supply chain, but really fill a need for a trusted supply chain that's not greenwashing and actually is doing what you're saying.
Yeah, you raise an interesting point about the competition, and I think that's something we see in the blockchain space a lot. Is the more competition that enters, the more validation you have for the technology, and then it just becomes a game of if you cannot succeed, now it's really your own fault as opposed to blaming anything else. But Sean, you just picked up a bottle. People watching the video on YouTube will see you had a bottle. I guess that's some glass cleaner. If you want to give some
Windex bottle from Etsy Johnson. So these are made of our social plastic, where we have complete traceability of the supply chain and the impact side to a social plastic product that's both ocean-bound plastic, but helping regenerate the areas that it comes from.
Okay, excellent. And yeah, we didn't give Alistair a chance yet. Before we move on, maybe Alistair can talk a little bit about competition and the previous question.
Yeah, I mean, there are a number of solutions out there for traceability. Most of them is focused for intra-company traceability. So what comes into your company, how the products and how you assemble your products within a company, and then what goes out. And that's really your only legal requirement as well. It's what's called one up, one down traceability. Traceability systems were really sort of evolved around the pharmaceutical industry, the medical industry, track and trace drugs and medical samples, those sorts of things. It then became obviously very important in our food industries, especially for food recalls, when there was some sort of toxic event, food poisoning event, those sorts of things. You need to track it down fairly quickly. Whole chain interoperable systems, there aren't too many. And the business model is the biggest challenge. Who pays what, when, where, how for a traceability system? And with 95% of the world's seafood coming from developing nations, it's even harder to trace the product back to the fisherman or the farmer. And indeed, the farm, you have to trace it back to the feed that he's using to feed the fish or the shrimp. So it's a massive challenge, and farmers and fishers don't really see the return on investment. They're paying for a system, but they don't see any benefit for it. So this is why it is such a difficult challenge. So for us, we decided to make it free. So we built a MFIS solution with the US State Department. But free wasn't enough. You have to provide an incentive. And how do you price the data? Well, so for us, we just built this system, used Fishcoin, that powers the blockchain that operates as the incentive. Downstream actors can purchase the tokens and then reward the upstream actors for sharing their data. And those tokens can be redeemed for airtime top-ups, which are valuable in developing nations. So the bottom line is that we're not selling it. We aren't pricing it. You can get blockchain traceability for 1 cent. But what we do think is the market will eventually work out what the value of that traceability data is, and it will be pegged to the value and the volume of the seafood and the market that it's going to. And we make commissions from that. We split those commissions with developers who build a solution, like the son of a fisherman or the daughter of a fish farmer who's technologically inclined. We want to provide them with the toolkits to build apps around our protocol. And we incentivize them by splitting that commission. And eventually we want to make the fishers and farmers shareholders in the business of traceability. So that they actually become part of the business themselves. We also want to pay tax. we really want to pay tax. We want governments to get tax revenues so they can invest that in fisheries research and development and monitoring, compliance and surveillance efforts. That's absolutely mission critical as well. So, yeah, we're a bit unique in that sense. IBM created Food Trust, to give you an example, and the minimum fee was $100 a month. And that's why it's not accessible. It's not workable. And so we don't really see any competitors at this stage because we're not really pricing it. It's hard to get investors, though, when you've got a business model like that.
Yeah, I don't meet too many people. I was muted there. Yeah, I don't meet too many people in this industry who come on and say they want to pay taxes, but that's the first one.
We had a legal tax advisor that was trying her best to find ways for us not to pay tax, and then we stumped her by saying, no, we must pay tax. We want to work with government. Governments can give fishermen ownership of the fishing stocks, and that is mission critical. But they need data to do that, so we have to work with governments. And they have to have the capacity to do the verification piece, and also we can do the carrot. They can do the stick as well if they need to.
Yeah. I was going to ask this later, but you've already brought it up, so it seems like a good time to segue into it. I guess kind of like how your companies are approaching this challenge, right? Obviously, you talked a little bit about incentivizing, the producers, in this case, the upstream, the farmers, you also talk about working with governments. And then Sean kind of hit on this earlier about how he was, creating the industry and then in all of it, right? Because I think Heidi's maybe more focused on the 2B kind of clients and, getting them to purchase from her. So all of you have very different strategies, I guess, vectors of how you enter the industry, how you develop the industry, I guess. So maybe talk a little bit about the strategy of how you get people to use your companies, your products and services. Sure. I guess maybe Heidi can go first.
Yeah. So an interesting observation in the textile industry is that there are two, the sourcing department and the marketing department in an apparel or fashion company. They are two different worlds in a way. So the sourcing part, they have demands and they might have these kind of the corporate goal of we should have this many percentage of our fabrics made more sustainable or this, but they are still very much in that mindset of, negotiating price, because that's how the textile industry works, right? They really source for the cheapest way of, and it's tough negotiations. So that's the buyers of fabrics and clothes. The marketing side, though, they are the ones that are selling, let's say, to the customers in Europe. And they are seeing a totally different, the customers wanting to see information about where the products are coming from. And one of the things we do then is that we are based in China where everything has a QR code. I think maybe this is a positive thing from COVID. I know from Norway, where I'm from, that there's the uptake of putting QR codes on things like menus and whatever has gone up a lot because people don't want to touch things during the pandemic. So this is a tool we use then as a marketing tool that our customers, the brands, that they can mark the clothes very easily give access to this information about where the plastic comes from, which is then pulled from our blockchain tracing, and adding information about how even showing how can a bottle turn into a high quality fabric. So for me it's very interesting from this marketing perspective, talking with the buyers and the marketing departments of the same companies. They have quite different perspectives, and I'm very hopeful about using the consumer incentive, using that marketing budget to generate, to pull this industry forward, rather, maybe than the sourcing departments. So that's one of those things that we are very much working on now.
It's interesting you mentioned the Norwegian side, because I have noticed like a very large presence in Shanghai. I know DNVGL had a big presence. They're now DNV here, working on a lot of these sort of marine ecosystems. Do you have any connection to that?
Well, the Norwegian community here is quite small, so I do know them, and I do think what they're doing is great. And the shipping, they come from verification industry, and the shipping industry, which is having troubling times, like it's tough times for them, and then they do see the value of what they like. Shipping is supply chain, and they're also very much tech focused. So yeah, I'm connected with them. I really think they're doing great things, and I also think they are an example of a company. So they have a great collaboration, with I think this way of, again, working as ecosystem and companies working together. And I think they are a great example of that, being a Norwegian company and then collaborating with quite a few Chinese entities on this. And again, I think that's for global problems. I really think we need these kind of global collaborations too.
Okay. And one more question. You mentioned that a lot of the consumers of your products are based in Europe. Is that something by design, or is it something that just happened because Europe tends to be more progressive in certain areas?
This is a very interesting question, and the background is that the founder, Monique, my son, she started this as a trading company with the traditional clothing industry, buying and producing in China, selling to Europe, and then she started seeing this potential, as I said, with using the plastic to make polyester, the most used fiber. And again, working with her existing customers she had in Europe. So that's how she started it. And up until now, and we're now talking like kind of up until this year, recycled things in China has not had a good sound to the consumer. In China, things need to be new, and recycled means downgraded. But this is changing so quickly, and this is super interesting to observe. And I think it's so much driven by Beijing. You can say a lot about, how things are pushed out through, regulations here. But when they start talking about the textile industry having to become more sustainable, when that is a message coming from Beijing, all the big Chinese brands listen. So just over the last few months, we are seeing now we're talking the biggest brands in China reaching out, asking, how can we increase our pet content? And it's so great to see. And I think it's going to move very, very quickly. And then, of course, hopefully, we are in a good position because we're already here. So that's very, very positive development. And I also see there are trends. We are based in Shanghai, which is not China, but there are trends here as well where our pet recycled things are becoming more hot, right? It's environmental concerns is actually on the rise in China among the people, not only from pushed from Beijing. And that is, I think everyone should be very happy about that. The most populous country in the world is really stepping up on this.
Yeah, yes. And I don't think we'll go very deep into the politics. Sometimes we do here because the leadership style does tend to push initiatives, in a very strong direction. But yeah, it's encouraging to see that, environmental protection is getting, pushed up by this effect. Sean, we don't want to leave you out either. Talk a little bit about like your strategy, and developing the markets, and which part of the supply chain that you're pushing the most to get people to use your products and services.
Yeah, and as I said, we have the unique challenge of having to do the double-sided market where, one of the things we had actually brilliant opportunity to do for our customer side for us, we made a decision that it's got to be a brand alignment, like a values alignment, or else it's not going to work. That when we started, you do get some people that are purely doing campaigns, and you do get some people that really want to do it the authentic way. And, the comment about Europe, even just so I spread it out here. So like Henkel and their products in Europe, and we have a huge amount of European companies where I think there was a certain mentality of there is a right way to do it. And in 5 years from now, we need to be getting there, not doing what you can get by right now. So again, we do have great partners all over, but we just found so many people in Europe. You could have the conversation of, our staff know that we need to get here. So in a great way, we need to hold you to this level, because we cannot ever have a marketing claim that comes out as greenwash. We can't be challenged. And in such a good way, their standard of what you can say, what you can claim was just ahead on how much sustainability, was ahead of the curve. So, for us, this industry was big in that I think the European consumer is much more purpose aware before it came to Canada, before it came to the USA. So for us, we really look at from that side of when we can really partner with the company that cares on the level of their staff, being able to tell the kids about what they're working on, really guided that we got to say no to anything that didn't hold the level of, if it's not giving back, if it's not, something fully audible, if it's not something authentically, doing more of an impact than you're claiming, then it's not a project we're interested in being a part in. So once we figured out that we actually could find partners, and as you guys were alluding to, if no one pays for it, you'll have no business model, but who are willing to pay for it to be done in this regenerative, traceable way, this allowed us to have that entire other side of the system where we can either create or certify recycling systems to use our technology, follow our rules, follow the no child labor, follow the ethical, the social nature we need, and finance sustainably the ability to pay more, to provide insurance, to provide other benefits, to make recycling a starting point. This is really what allowed us to create a two-sided market and continue just to even look at sometimes not even competition, but who complements what we can all do together. And this is what, it doesn't have to be an us versus the world, but who else can we partner with and layer solutions together that we're all working on bringing more trust and dignity and reliability to recycling, because it is an industry with so many myths, so many false myths and facts. But again, there is a way that plastics used responsibly in a closed loop way. And, it is something when you have both sides and all sides of the market together, there's total solutions that everyone can win.
Okay, excellent. Now, this is supposed to be, with a BSN blockchain. So we haven't really talked about the technology itself much, and this is something that I'm really keen to get into. Sean, you're the CTO of your company, so maybe this is something that you'll really enjoy talking about. But yeah, how is your company using blockchain? I guess that's the most basic question we can start with.
For sure. So the core fundamentally, I started with the pain points of, how do we put millions of dollars into these countries, these regions, and trust that it goes to the right people? I really wanted to look at, again, how can I have either savings or credit, financial inclusion being a big part of this? And, when we started 8 years ago, blockchain wasn't necessarily the talk of the town, but right when we were ready to how do we scale, how do we grow it? I had a great connection with IBM where we started to look at, do we need blockchain? What smart contracts make sense? And this was right when they were launching, or as part of a consortium, Hyperledger Fabric, to where I was introduced to the concept of a business blockchain, where, there's a lot of biases and kind of myths of a blockchain that does every single feature possible versus what do we need to solve our pain point. So we use kind of the IBM stack of blockchain on Hyperledger Fabric and Linux One in the IBM cloud. But with Hyperledger, we're able to create our own token system, no transaction fees, almost a near real-time transaction, which allows us to work in really low data, hard to reach areas, and build our own program where, since it's our own closed loop system, every user signed up on our network, everyone has a blockchain ID, a blockchain wallet, and every transaction is ingrained into that blockchain ledger, which becomes our source of truth for everything we do. So for us, blockchain was a big part of how do we provide this digital payment system in very vulnerable areas, but also that trusted ledger is something in the supply chain world that also happens to be, a lot of our partners have, departments looking for blockchain supply chain as part of that trust stamp. So, it kind of serves both sides of the market for what we do.
Great. Real quick, I want to follow up on that. I hope it doesn't seem like I'm challenging you on this point at all, but I saw recently that, IBM, especially on what Alistair said about, if it's too expensive, no one's going to use it. The knock on IBM has always been that it's a very expensive blockchain offering. And they've recently had some personnel shakeups. I believe the head left after, being there since the beginning. Do you have any insights on that you can say without getting in trouble, I guess?
Yeah, no, I can't say I have any dirt to dish other than we've had an amazing relationship of really being able to get the right advice by the right people at the right time. And, especially where IBM's ability or their ability to consult and have for us was a huge part of kind of our foundational startup. So, I used to do a lot of the touring event stuff, but I've also, with COVID, I've been away from IBM Think from the last 2 years. So, all I know is the great people I work with, but not aware of what's going on.
Okay. I don't know if BSN is partnered with IBM, so maybe I should watch what I say on that one. Anyway, Heidi, how about go ahead and maybe, I know you're more on the marketing side, but maybe you have some insights into the technology.
Yeah, we have actually our own solution. I'm not the tech expert on this, so I'll just introduce briefly. We have developed our own solution, which is a lot about getting information real time at every transaction point, because that's where we know we can trace and secure. Because when we plan a production. When an order is placed and we know we need this much fabric coming out, so we know how much plastic needs to come in. And then because we don't have our own production, so we work with a network of a lot of suppliers. So suppliers for the plastic, which is like recycling centers, and then you have it has to be turned into pellets, and then that has to be turned into yarns, which is then again turned into the fabrics. So we have a network of these suppliers, and for us, how we trace this is with scanning so having the feedstock and the physical goods. We have these locks and these scannable these locks on the actual goods that are shipped. And these have to be scanned, and then we know what location and what time, and they also upload a weight, which is really the indicator for us to know that it's the same stuff moving through. Because if there's anything not right, if the weight is not according to our what we expect it to be, then it's likely that there's some virgin material coming in, and then we get these notifications about this happening. So for us, that's really because, again, we have this network of all these suppliers. And then we offer our customers, the brands, access to see this data so that they can feel, they actually have real-time access through a portal we have for them, so they can see what's happening throughout. So that's, and I think that's for us, there are other... in the textile market, there are other blockchain solutions, but I think a lot of them are more about storing certificates in a one-time, like, okay, we have a certificate for this, and that's verified by blockchain somehow. And I think what we are doing as we are following the whole chain, I think that is quite unique in the way we're doing.
Mm-hmm. And like Alistair said before, like one of the problems is getting these people to do it. So how do you incentivize the suppliers? Do you just pay extra for the products, or are they incentivized to do this sort of behavior?
This is a challenge. The thing, again, in the textile industry, you actually need to have quite a lot of quality control people out there. We do give training. Many of our partners are long-term partners. And of course we do this we do what we can to make it as easy for them, using WeChat here in China to scan, and as easy as possible for them to do it, and working together with them. And but this is actually this is of course one of the challenges. But we're trying different things, and so far it's working. It's working well. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Alistair. I know you have a PhD. You might be more focused on the academic side of things, but maybe share some tech insights with us.
No, well, I only did a PhD so I could get exit rows on aeroplanes. Well, the problem is it's only 2-chambered hearts that I can work on. So, going back to, I guess, our journey and the other previous question about getting to market, and why are we in a business that we're not pricing a product and making it freely available? I have a bit of a confession. If you look at our website, Each Mile Technologies, you wouldn't know really what we do or what our objective is. It's actually to bring platform disruption, or I'd say platform efficiency, to the seafood supply chains that basically take the fish from the fishermen and provide it to the retailers and the restaurants. But something that Sean mentioned on a multi-sided platform, platforms can really help. If we are bringing the fishermen together with the retailers through a platform, and we operate on a commission basis, it's in our interest to make sure that the seafood that we trade on that platform is legal, reported, it's regulated, it's safe, it's of a high quality, it's consistent, and it's sustainable and it's responsible. And that's why we believe that the platform approach to trading seafood is really going to transform the industry. However, to supply a particular buyer, say who needs 1,000 tons of product a year, you need access to 2,000 tons. Because of all the systematic risk in a supply chain, the natural disaster, the human disaster, the military coups, the wars, the earthquakes, volcanic ash clouds, you know, and pandemics. Yeah. The reason why I'm on news, I've got 3 boys doing homeschooling in the other room. You need all that, and to earth those supply chains each time is a real challenge. You can't do it quickly. That's why we came up with FishCoin in the first place. It was really about getting it out there, and to do that, we wanted to do an ICO. We went down that path with the view of setting up a non-profit foundation that would give out these tokens en masse to governments and non-government organizations to seed the ecosystem as such. We still have that ambition, but we had to peg it back. And we built on Ethereum the first time around. But Ethereum's was very slow to upgrade. The cost of transaction, the speed of transaction was going to be a major problem for us. And obviously also the volatility of the market makers and everything else, the legal side of it, the technology side of it, all led to us thinking, well, this is a bit too immature. And we needed to stop. So we did. We didn't go public. There was a scam that we had to try and stop as well. We did stop. We signed rescission agreements. We handed all the money back, all the Ethereum back. It wasn't the easiest thing to do. We were doing it, signing those agreements and sending back the money on Christmas Day, actually, on 2018, after working a year and a half every day for nothing. It was one of the hardest times for our company. But we rebuilt on the Stellar platform, and because of the thousands of transactions that can perform for a fraction of a cent. So that suited our purposes, because it really has to, obviously we're dealing with fishers and farmers in the developing nations. It was a much better solution for us. We are going to be migrating over to Cardano. And the main reason is that they're more aligned with our mission. And we just love the people that are there. And we really feel that together we can we'll change the world. They're really looking at solutions in places like Africa, where we want to be and we need to be, and Indonesia. So how do we get scale? Partnerships. For example, there's a program that we have. It's with the United Nations Development Program, the Archipelagic Island States Forum, and it's a joint research project with 2 universities, an Australian university that has a campus here in Singapore, and a university in Sulawesi in Indonesia. And we're working with fishers to incentivize them to tag fish and release them, the juvenile fish. And so that the scientists, the government are getting data, the fishermen are getting rewarded, and the fish spend more time in the water getting bigger, so it increases their economic yield. So that project's underway right now. We're presenting that to 34 ministers at a high-level meeting in November. So partnerships are critical. Our foundation is important. We can give away tokens to supply chains. But like I said, our end game is a trading platform. And so we have this sort of follow the rabbit strategy, if you like, where we actually buy and sell seafood. There's no better way to introduce a technology and the benefits of it than actually being a buyer of the seafood and say, hey, look, we've got this system, please use it. So that's known in platform industries, that's known as a follow the rabbit strategy, where you become your own customer to demonstrate its worth as such. I guess that's covers those two questions, I hope.
Yeah, it does very well. Thank you, Alistair. I guess the next topic that we should talk about here, we're kind of reaching the late stages of the webinar, but with blockchain, it kind of opens the door to collaboration. And I obviously all of you have talked sort of about how governments and academia have played a role in that. So I guess I'm very curious on how are you increasing these systems to be more interoperable, including perhaps in the future with maybe government, maybe like we talked about accreditation, all these things that can the blockchain is kind of designed for. Is that a direction you guys are heading? Or maybe you can speak to some of these points. We can start with Alistair this time.
Yeah, so we try to be operating system agnostic as such. The trace protocol that's behind the Fishcoin initiative. And Fishcoin is just a skin. We can solve challenges, we believe, in the palm oil industry and the cocoa industry with a similar sort of coin or token. So we try to, the protocol itself is blockchain operating system agnostic. And so we want the developers to build on the systems of choice. We also, by the way, have a fish hackathon, which I need to mention. That we the world's largest environmental hackathon, and we have the responsibility of running it. But the idea there is to generate awareness and really help provide the toolkits, if you like, for coders and developers, young students, and in the developing world. And that mission is really closely aligned with what BSN is about as well. So we're looking forward to that. With governments, it's critical. It's really important to work with the regulators. We're collaborating closely with the government of Mauritius at the moment, and representatives there to, I guess, allay their fears, but find a way and a path forward that we can be legal, and we can deal with data protection. We can deal with data sovereignty. Because these are all critical things, and then we can deal with the disincentives as well as the incentives of sharing data, and security breaches, those sorts of things. I think I've covered most of that. Something, let me know.
No, that's great. Sean, do you want to pick up where you left off?
For sure. For us, especially where partnerships and interoperability is a huge part, where I'm a big advocate for stablecoin style blockchain, where as compared to try to, reinvent a currency in our part, we're just trying to bring, trust and digital payments. And for us, as doing a stablecoin where one token's $1 US cent, everything backed by funds in our account, it makes it a lot easier. We still need our token to be completely usable in every local ecosystem. And some of these, you're talking some of the most, vulnerable, out of reach areas. So for us, the one thing that's worked really well, with a system with a guaranteed rate of what it is any day, we partner with the local digital wallets, the local digital telecoms, to be able to have an interaction where we can actually, through API, integrate whatever your local payment or digital payment provider of choice, you can cash out at any time. And this is one of the big things for partnerships for us. I know there's a lot of, utility coins and a lot of things that you hold on and hope you can get value. For us, especially with some of our members, like, you need to be able to cash out to eat. You need to be able to just get this guaranteed. For us, the partnerships are a big point of how do we get the most value that you can get in that very vulnerable spot. And that's a critical part that, as much as I say we're a whole lot of points in the ecosystems, we're still not at the level that we are at the, the 7-Eleven, at the grocery store. And this is where that last mile partnerships are so key for us to actually get true value to the people that need it.
Right. And Heidi, anything to add on to that?
Well, I want to make a comment, a bit personal comment to Alistair, because I'm Norwegian, Perfect. Right? So Norway has a very long coastline, and I'm actually from a fishing village myself. And Norway has been through a lot of problems because of overfishery. But then I've also worked with Norwegian aid programs. So I want to, I want to ask Alistair if he's checked out Fish for Development. I think there could be some very interesting partnerships with some Norwegian organizations, also because Norway has a long legacy of management of fish stock in a sustainable way. So that's just a personal comment. And then about the government part, we are not at the moment, but I think this is one of the areas, again, being in China, where Beijing is very positive about blockchain, as we know, in across areas. And we already see, I'm already getting invites to other conferences, and a lot of companies are getting into this space of how can we take this, again, as I said, the textile industry is like very old fashioned. It's a lot of pollution, but it's a very big industry here in China. And applying all the technology developments that are going on here with IoT, with blockchain, plugging it in there. Alibaba has, they have a test project where they're, bringing, of course, in Alibaba, it's all about then bringing the small producers into the big ecosystem and then reducing waste and reducing, being the designer, being able to directly send things to the small factories and getting it back. So there's a lot of interesting developments here in China, and for sure, I think. That the government will also support this. I don't know how it will look because, again, the textile industry is very fragmented, very traditional. These are very traditional factories with relatively still, not high-tech places where it's plug and play. But I'm sure local governments will incentivize this, and I see the bigger companies entering the space. So very, very promising and it will be very interesting times ahead.
Alistair, do you want to answer that point? Well, Norway is pretty important. Actually, I was on a webinar 2 weeks ago sponsored by the Norwegian government. That was in and around technology for aquaculture, specifically sensors on farms to gather data to help the farmers achieve precision farming, but also work back in the supply chain for precision nutrition. So I'm aware of it. There is the Mobile for Development also. We partner with the GSMA, the Global Telco Association, because they're going to be the main benefactor with the token when it's converted into an airtime top-up. They get most of the money. So they're really incentivized to help us scale because their ARPU, their average revenue per user, is all about data. Mm-hmm. And governments, also because they're going to get access to that data, incentivized to work with us. We still want to produce a governance token and have a foundation run that with representatives from developing and developed nations, both government, non-government, and industry. So best governance practice. So that's why we're in the process of talking with the Mauritian government. We're looking at a security token offering in our core business, the trading platform, which will allow us to give the fishers and the farmers equity tokens every time they trade on that platform, and they have ownership of that as well as the traceability system, which is mission critical. Again, what was the other question? I think was there another question in there? I'm trying to remember. No, I think I've lost it.
It's okay. we're reaching the end of the hour here. So I think a great way to kind of put a cherry on top here would be for, if there was a way for anyone listening who maybe wants to get involved or to learn more about your project, and to, maybe have some closing thoughts as well. Maybe this would be a good time for each of you to give us some insights on that. Why don't we go ahead and start with Sean? So go ahead.
Perfect. Yeah, no, anyone can visit plasticbank.com, and we have ways to get involved, whether it's with your company or even just at home to calculate your footprint, offset it, and see how you can be on a journey of helping to stop ocean plastic.
Heidi?
Yeah, from us at Waste to Wear, I think everyone as a consumer is starting to bring up this discussion and starting looking at what you're wearing and engaging and learning about what are different fabrics. And some tell me, I don't wear polyester. And I say, do you do sports, right? What are your running shoes made of? What is all your sportswear made of? Everyone has polyester. And what is your curtains at home? What's your sofa? This is huge markets for polyester. So I think as consumers, start telling your brands, start engaging with what you buy in this level. And then as company owners, and we don't think a lot about this, but uniforms, that's actually a huge market for polyester, which also governments, super interesting. If you make, and we are in talks with, let's say, we are in talks both with big fast food chains in Europe and train operators, right? The amount of polyester which is in all the uniforms of staff in a train company, that's where you also can get some really big impact. So, look for the opportunities both as a consumer and as a business owner.
Alistair?
I'm so glad I put on a bamboo shirt this morning. When we started, I thought, oh gosh, what am I wearing? But yeah, it's obviously very important to consider what you're purchasing. We often talk about in our industry that every time you take a mouthful, you vote. You're sort of voting for a world that your children are going to inherit. We can't do that every time, of course, but it's something to try and think of. Is it what are you putting in your mouths and what are you putting in your children's mouths, and how is that affecting the planet and the people that bring you that product? Are they being exploited? Is there child labour, processing that fish that you're purchasing? It's important to be aware and make choices the best you can. We can be contacted on eachmile.co or fishcoin.co or fishhackathon.co if there's any interest in working with us and collaborating with us. It's a really, really big and important challenge that both Sean and Heidi are working on, and as well, we're working on trying to make the oceans more sustainable, be managed and more responsibly managed as well for both people and the planet. So, we really appreciate the opportunity. I'll just quickly touch on China if I can, because I did start, when we first got on, I heard Heidi talking about the importance of China. China produces 65% of the world's seafood. It's the largest fisher, it's the largest farmer, it's the largest processor, and the largest consumer of seafood. So you can't have a conversation about seafood sustainability and protecting the oceans without China. So it's really, really important that we work closely with China. So it's been a great opportunity to be on this webinar today with BSN, and we're really looking forward to collaborating with the BSN and making blockchain, more accessible to those developers and coders in the developing world that, we all rely upon, especially China.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Alistair. And thank you everyone, Sean and Heidi, because I think this conversation, more than the usual ones we have, which might focus more on the financial aspects or just the pure technology aspects, this one in terms of making people think about the decisions they make, I think it was really enlightening. So thanks again for the time. And, I look forward to catching up in the future.
Thanks, Ben.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Heidi. Thanks, Sean. Cheers.
Everyone.
Bye.